I think, Rita, you have to stop preparing your speeches. Because the stark difference between your delivery when you had a prepared speech and when you just did that whole tux versus suit thing. Where was that Rita in the 5 to 7 minutes earlier? And of course, there was not every part, not every speech requires that kind of energy. And there would be the high and the lows in your speech. But I just wanted to see more energy. I think I've said this to you before, smile more, smile lots. And you did do that. But there was room for more of that towards the end of the speech, especially as you brought closure to the situation with Jeremy. Overall, I love the speech. I love it when people come up and just make themselves so vulnerable in that speaking area, and you were in that situation today, so I completely reached out to you today, connected with you today. Thank you.
I have also something to say.
Fabulous.
First of all, thank you for sharing the story with us, because it's a very personal topic and it's hard to share, even with your best friend, not in front of a few strangers. It was very nice. The one thing I would like you to work on is it's a storytelling. Tell us a story. More sounding in a parts of almost like a lecture. I'm going to teach you something today. But in a storytelling manual, if you say, okay, let's get personal, be personal. Make it more of, I'm going to tell you a story of my life. Something would happen to me, and there's no need of description of certain parts of the lecture. So just make it more of a conversational story, as I'm going to tell you something about me. And don't be afraid to be comfortable as you can be. I'm just going to repeat what Ajal said, but just be more, don't be afraid. You can just go a little more personal. That I really like it. Thank you.
Sharon.
Thank you, Miriam. Because you said what I was and the difference between the lecture, particularly with the one-handed gesture, the sort of pointy kind of thing that you use a lot. What I'm asking is, you already took a risk by telling us something that is unbelievably personal. I'm asking you to do a little bit more, go a little bit deeper, and really share some of the journey if you want people to change.
I have a lot to say today, it looks like. I loved your speech. I was pleasantly surprised with the way you talked. All the positives which they say, I agree. I had 2 points which I wanted to make, which I saw. If you had, which I saw were missing. And one thing was, you brought up a very important point about things will be how they will be, but the context in which you look at things will differ. For example, I can say a story about a mason putting bricks, and that's a normal story. But then I can build it around that a mason is building bricks, but the way he's operating is he's building it for a church where people would come in and pray and get peace of mind. Now, he's doing the same thing, but the context with which he's operating is different, and you brought that. But you didn't pull that in so powerfully that people get that, you can do your normal things in life, but the context out of which you operate is what will make you powerful. It doesn't have to be something extraordinary. So you did bring that out a little bit. I wanted you to be a little bit more forceful so people get a shock and say, you know what, she's right. That was one thing. And the second thing, it's similar to what Atul's speech had, was you ended very beautifully, but it's like a movie ending, and they lived happily ever after. and what's the impact of that movie in our lives? It's something, oh, it was a nice movie, but you move on with your life. There needs to be something after that. This is what happened, this is what I saw, this is how I had a breakthrough, and this is the impact of my life. This is the impact on my son's life. And when you bring that in, that's what people get. Because that's what people want. Okay, I want this impact on me. I want this to be real in my life. That's what I do. Thank you.
Anyone else for you?
No. Personal observation. I have my own biblical story. It has nothing to do with grandmothers. And you asked, everybody has their own story, so I do. It's leaving Cuba at age 10 and not getting any notice. Entirely your culture, your friends, and whatever just got disappeared. Right? So that I couldn't map your experience into mine and make the connection. And I don't know that I can suggest a way to do it, but it's just feedback that there wasn't enough universality in what I heard to let me perhaps more usefully process that, childhood memory. And perhaps it's more like some of these suggestions that if it had been taken on and drawn out a little more and made more universal, not so much about your own story, but about everybody's stories, then we would have hooked in. Do you bring in other people's stories that dilutes it? But I think, for somebody who has a story of that sort, how do you bring them in and how do you make it come alive? That would be the question I would do.
I always go back with these emotional stories. I might have been Henry Miller who said at one point, when you have a very emotional story, figuring out how much emotion to bring out in the story is always a big deal. I don't know if I was right, but I think I detected at the end you were starting to feel it. Yeah, and that's the thing with these stories, is if you're saying something, you have to be ready to figure out how much you're going to reveal and how much emotion you're going to have. And you have to be okay with it. I actually saw, I think it was in a speech contest, the guy had a story about his father, and he, started welling up in the contest. I was like, okay, you're not quite ready to tell that story yet. You have to come to grips with it a little bit more yourself first. So we've had a couple of them in this club where someone has revealed something so deeply personal about themselves, and I'm amazed by it, and just take the point of figure out how much you can reveal and how much you're willing to give, and I think that's what you did. Maybe why you didn't give us too much more detail or too much more of the personal feeling, because that's too much. leave it for the club and bring us back to ourselves. So that's, I think, an interesting lesson for all of us when we have something. I feel so thankful I don't have something like that to share with you all, I don't think. And hopefully I won't have to deal with something like that. But if you do, to figure out how much of it to give is a challenge. And something I'm glad here at Next Step we can help all of you with. So thank you. Thank you to all of you, the speeches today. We had a couple of very serious, although one of them a humorous bent to a serious, and one just really humorous speech. And they were all fun and entertaining. So as always, we've done a fabulous job here in the club.
Speaker 2, which was Rita, and I liked your use of quick, where you use those repetitive words. I think that really worked well. There was one sentence that seemed to have a lot of clauses. The person, who is this, who is this, who is German. So it might make sense to have just German as an adjective or adjective at some point. And the one thing, if every one of us everyone has. I think everyone always looks at the of us. And the only reason I noticed that is because you made a really great pause. And I think the sentence you were saying was very impactful, but everyone has.